ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਇਨਫੋਕਸ ਦੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਹਾਂ ਜਸਟੀਨ ਕੌਰ ਕੋਵਿਡ-19 ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਸੂਬੇ ਦੇ ਮਜ਼ਬੂਤ ਆਰਥਿਕ ਸੁਧਾਰ ਲਈ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ 2021 ਪ੍ਰੀ ਬਜਟ ਕੰਸਲਟੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਹਨ। ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੀ ਬਜਟ ਕੰਸਲਟੇਸ਼ਨਸ 12 ਫਰਵਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਬੰਦ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਜਾਣਗੀਆਂ ਅਤੇ 31 ਮਾਰਚ ਨੂੰ 2021 ਦਾ ਬਜਟ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਏਗਾ। ਇਸੇ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਵਿਸਤਾਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਲਈ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਲਾਈਨ ਤੇ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਹਨ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਦੇ ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਦੇ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟਰੀ ਅਸਿਸਟੈਂਟ ਅਤੇ ਐਮਪੀਪੀ ਸਟੈਂਚੋ। Hello MPP Stancho, thank you so much for joining PDC Punjabi.
Sat Sri Akal, Jasleen, thank you so much for having me today.
Sat Sri Akal, and it's a pleasure for us as well. MPP Stancho, as we know that Ontario government is right now doing pre-budget consultations across Ontario, which actually started in January. So what feedback you have received so far from the community?
Well, we have lots of feedback we received. We've been everywhere in Ontario virtually, from Kenora to Ottawa, from Kapuskasing to Windsor and everything in between. And so today is an opportunity to listen to the great people of Peel and Brampton. We had a budget tabled in November, and I spoke with the City of Brampton and many small businesses, charities, non-profits, frontline healthcare workers for that budget. I heard many, many great ideas then, and many of those ideas were implemented into our last budget. And I'm expecting much of the same. I've already heard some great ideas. But, like always, we hear some new ones, and I expect today will be no exception to that.
As we know that COVID-19 has exposed the long-term care crisis across Canada, especially in Ontario, which highlighted the need for home cares for seniors. Is government planning to prioritize home care across Ontario?
Absolutely. Home care and long-term care sector, these are crucially important, particularly when you have an aging population. And let's remember that these challenges existed in that sector even before the pandemic hit us. And that's why our government, one of the first things we did when we formed government in 2018 was to create a standalone ministry of long-term care. And we've created a nation-leading standard we've committed to of 4 hours of care per resident. This is going to be implemented in 4 years, a very aggressive plan. And leading the country, as I mentioned, that just not only takes resources, which we've dedicated to in the billions of dollars in increases, but it also takes a plan to make sure that we have the necessary labor to fulfill that, and making sure that we respect the seniors' wishes. My parents are seniors, and many seniors prefer to age at home. And that's why in our last budget, we introduced the seniors home safety tax credit, which will allow seniors to make changes in the home, whether that's widening their ramps or adding security cameras so that they're better able to age at home. And there's, of course, the issue of hallway healthcare. The funds are being directed towards that as well. But the whole comprehensive system needs to be looked at in a very detailed way, and more work has to be done, certainly, and we are up for that challenge.
MPP Stancho, Ontario is a community support association which provides home care and community services to more than 200 not-for-profit organizations, says that even the Ontario government, under both Liberal and Conservative leadership, has increased in its investment in home care and community services over the last decade, but those investments have not kept pace with the needs of an aging population. The association is now advocating for an investment of $595 million in the 2021 budget to make that happen.
Yes, and I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to reading that budget submission when it is put forward. But certainly, overall, our government has increased funding to $1.75 billion in the last budget alone to address the concerns just as you've mentioned, Jasleen. And so while we recognize that more work has to be done, we need to make sure that these funds are flowing directly to the sources that will alleviate the pressure points into the system. And that's going to take all hands on deck. That means we need to continue to consult. We need to build pilot projects that will help to lead to those results faster, and we need to work in conjunction with our partners in the city who are actually building the beds to make sure that when they say there are challenges to getting those beds built, that we address those challenges, that we had put the infrastructure in place to make sure that it is not a problem that we are just solving for today, but for the years to come. Because you're right, we have an aging population, and the stresses on the system are going to continue.
MPP, as we know that we are also doing the pre-budget consultations in Peel region, and we know that Peel region has almost 175,000 businesses, and it has faced tremendous challenges. Recently, Peel region launched a public campaign asking residents to raise their voice to provincial and federal government to provide paid sick leaves. Will government consider bringing this in the budget?
Absolutely. And I want to remind everybody that we already have paid sick leave in the province of Ontario. The province has signed a $19 billion agreement with the federal government in July, which included $1.1 billion to cover the cost of 10 paid sick days. So we believe in Ontario that program already exists. We don't want to duplicate that. Those funds, and you mentioned the small businesses, Jasleen, we need to make sure that if the program exists, there's no point in duplicating. Those funds have now been redirected to help the small businesses directly. And that's why in the last budget, we announced a $600 million program for business grants for the businesses hardest hit by COVID-19. So if your revenue was reduced, you can go to our portal online, which is available, ontario.ca/COVID-19, and apply for that direct grant. And this is not a loan program. This is going to provide direct funding. We also reduce permanently the costs of the VAT. That is the provincial portion of property taxes for many of the businesses out there. So businesses are going to see up to a 30% permanent reduction in property tax. This is in addition to relief on the hydro costs and other fixed costs. And that relief is going to continue. And that's precisely why we're out here touring the budget, because we want to hear from those businesses that you mentioned about other ideas and other supports that are necessary to make sure they weather this storm.
Absolutely. All right, MPP Stancho, we will continue this chat, but right after a short break. ब्रेक तो बाद ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਮਾਰਚ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਫਿਸਕਲ ਬਜਟ ਲਈ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਅਨਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ प्री बजट कंसल्टेशनस कीतियां जा रही हैं। इस संबंधी गलबात लई साडे नाल लाइन ते मौजूद हैं फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर दे पार्लीमेंटरी असिस्टेंट अते MPP Stancho. MPP Stancho, as we were talking about Peel region before the break, so Peel region has consistently had one of the country's highest rates of COVID-19 infections, and Peel also had a significant number of large multi-generational households. How concerned are you for Peel region?
I'm very concerned for Peel region. I have a lot of similarities from my home riding of Willowdale. We also have a lot of multi-generational homes, many new Canadians, many small business owners who are working, and these are unique challenges that we recognize in Peel. And that's why we need to get out there and listen to the people of Peel. And, I was there for the budget consultations about a year ago also, and I'm always amazed at the unique challenges and the unique solutions that come from direct residents, the people who are living through those conditions, who understand best what the needs of the community are. And so that is going to be no exception today, I'm sure of it. While we hear some common themes throughout the province of Ontario, we always hear things that are unique. And the city of Brampton, I'm sure, will tell us all about it today when we have those consultations.
MPP Stancho, you've also done some of the consultations with the business groups across Ontario. So what feedback you have received so far from the business community?
Yes, and the businesses, certainly it's the background I come from, Jasleen. When my parents immigrated here in 1970, they didn't have very much more than the clothes on their back, and they went right into small business. My first memories of growing up in Rexdale were in the corner of my parents' store, playing, doing homework, and watching them go through very difficult times, whether that was racism, a lack of business, and working long hours, 7 days a week. And many of the people in Brampton, this is a familiar story to them. And what we have to remember that is running a business is hard at the best of times, let alone during a globally uncertain situation that is COVID-19. And so we need to hear from these businesses about what support measures are going to help them weather this storm, because there will be a day when COVID-19 is a distant memory, and I look forward to that day. But when that day is here, the world will be competing for that competitive edge to be ahead. And Ontario needs to be positioned to make sure that we are remaining competitive. And that means laying the foundation for the recovery now. And that's why we're out here, to listen to those businesses in Peel, to tell us, and many of the great ideas, the business grant program, for example, that came from small businesses. When we're talking about a little thing such as taking out the takeout of alcohol, we heard this from the Brampton Chamber of Commerce last year, that this would help many of the small businesses out there to increase their revenue. And so it's ideas like this that I look forward to hearing, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of great ones today.
Ontario's 28-day stay-at-home order is set to expire, and the anti-lockdown group called We Are All Essential is urging all the businesses across the country to reopen on February 11, which right now is against the law, and they're calling lockdowns unjustified.
And it's something that it's unfortunate that, we're in a situation where people are suffering out there. And of course, this includes businesses, and that level of frustration, I understand. As I mentioned before, I come from that small business world, and these are difficult times. But we have to remember that there are health experts out there who are working around the clock to make sure that we protect our citizens. And the Premier and our government's made the decision to listen to those health experts. And so, while I know these times are challenging, it is the time to listen to our doctors, to the medical advice that we're getting, because Ontario, while it is hard, is doing better than much of the places around the world. And when we look to other jurisdictions very close to us who are struggling with 15, 20,000 cases a day in a city the same size as ours, just taking our neighbors to the south for as an example, we know that this is protecting lives. This is saving lives. And in the interim, our government is going to be there to support small businesses with, grant programs and relief on fixed costs to make sure that we get through this. But it is the time to listen to our doctors and make sure, because we're almost there, Jasleen. And so I ask for a little more patience, because the brighter days are on the horizon.
MPP Sancho, as we have seen devastating economic impact of COVID-19, apart from the pre-budget consultations across Ontario, how is government planning to rebuild the economy?
It's a great question, Jasleen. There's, as I said, laying the foundation now for recovery is important, but we have to remember where Ontario was before the pandemic. We have to get back to that pace. And that pace was record job creation. And job creation stimulates the economy. We need to create the conditions for those small businesses of all sizes to be able to find success in the province of Ontario. And that means not overtaxing, not overburdening people with red tape and useless regulations. We need to make sure that people are able to do what they do best, which is to earn a living and to create the conditions for that. And so that's exactly what we're going to continue to do. We've got to reduce hydro. We're making permanent reductions there. And really, whether it's an idea for the budget or outside of the budget, the most important thing is that we do our job as politicians, and our job is to listen to the people we serve. And so that process will continue. The budget cutoff for the submissions on your input is February 12th. But that doesn't mean you can't talk to us after. Contact your local member of provincial parliament, contact your councillor, your mayor, and your member of parliament to tell them what you believe is the way that we're going to create a successful economy here, because we are all in this together, although we hear it a lot. And so we need to make sure that we're on the same team.
Also, as I said, that we have seen devastating economic impacts of COVID-19. Last year, we saw crazy crisis. Hopefully, this year will be better. But as we're talking about the budget, when can we see a balanced budget?
Oh, that's a great question. And previous to the pandemic, we were on pace to balance the budget by the fiscal year of 2023-24. Of course, that's changed. And certainly I, for one, won't apologize for spending additional funds to protect the health and safety of the people we serve. And the Premier has said the same thing. But Jasleen, that reminds me of a story that, my parents told me in the little convenience store in Etobicoke when I was growing up. And I was only 9 years old, but I remember it very vividly. And I remember because my dad, there was a lineup out the door for the store, and it was extremely busy. And my mom and dad were doing really well. And I remember asking my parents for a toy after that busy day. And they taught me a very important lesson. And that was that when times are good, you put away for when times aren't as good. And sure enough, just a few weeks later, the basement flooded in the store, but they were able to weather that storm because they had saved for that rainy day. And that's what our province was doing in our first 2 years. We reduced the deficit in a big way by billions of dollars. In fact, we were 50% of our projections in terms of our deficit reduction. And that's what's allowed us to spend in the healthcare system, in the long-term care system, in supports for small businesses, because the rains are here. And so I'm confident that when COVID-19 is behind us, we'll return to that day. And that's why it's so crucial to lay the foundation now for that economic recovery, because what's going to drive the return to that balance is job creation, is economic success, is the day that people can return to their normal lives and just be happy once again.
All right, thank you so much, MPP Stancho, for joining our show. In the end, do you have any message for the viewers?
Yes, I just want to say shukriya to all your viewers for doing your part. And really, it's been a very difficult time, but we're close. We see the brighter days on the horizon, so we ask for a little bit more of patience. 14.5 million people have suffered in Ontario as a result of this pandemic, but I'm confident that we're very close to returning Ontario to not just recovery, but to the days of prosperity once again.
All right. Thank you, MPP Stancho. Thank you for joining PTC Punjabi, and please stay safe.
Thank you so much. Take care.
ओंटेरियो सरकार ਵੱਲੋਂ ਲਾਂਚ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ 2021 ਪ੍ਰੀ ਬਜਟ ਕੰਸਲਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਅਧੀਨ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਪੈਂਡੈਮਿਕ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਕਰਮਚਾਰੀਆਂ, ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਕਾਰੋਬਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰਨਾ ਜਾਰੀ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਲੋਕੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਲਾਹ ਆਨਲਾਈਨ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਵਰਚੁਅਲ ਕੰਸਲਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਰਾਹੀਂ 12 ਫਰਵਰੀ ਤੱਕ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਨ। ਸੋ ऐसी साड़ी अज की खास पेशकश जे तुहाडा कोई सवाल है या फिर अपना कोई विचार तुसीं साडे नाल साझा करना चाहते हो तो जरूर लिख के भेजो @feedback@ptcnetwork.com ते मिलांगे अगले हफ्ते। उदों तक लई मैनू दिओ इजाजत अते देश दुनिया दीयां खबरां लई तुसीं बने रहो PTC न्यूज़ दे नाल।